Welcome to the Vibrant Life Show. This show is all about exploring the purposes God has placed in our lives and the passions He's placed on our hearts to reach the community He has placed us in for such a time as this. Whether we're hearing stories of those living out their passions, helping you discover your gifts, asking hard questions, or leaning into cultural moments, the goal of this show is to remind us that the life we are created to live is an adventurous one, an authentic one, an abundant one. We are called to live the vibrant life. And this show is brought to you by Second Mile Realty. If you are in Arizona and you're looking to buy a home, contact Jan Gentry at Second Mile Realty at 480-540-9061, and she or one of her agents would love to help you find your next home. Well, hi everyone. I am your host, Allie Gentry, and I am here with a dear friend of mine, Jennifer Smestad. And today we are going to be talking about comparison and how that happens, and how in our day-to-day lives, and our heart here at the Vibrant Life Show is to help people live into the gifts that God has created them with so they can live out their God-given calling. But let's face it, a lot of times it's really difficult to do that because we start comparing with other people's lives. We start comparing with the dream we might have for our life and feeling like we're not there yet, and it can cause anxiety, and it can cause depression, and it can cause us to feel less than, but God has so much more for us. So today we're going to talk about that, and to do that, I have Jennifer Smestad with us. Hi,
Well,
Jen.
hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Me too.
Jennifer is an American country singer, songwriter, living in the heart of Music City,
Nashville.
Nashville, Tennessee. But
Yes.
she's originally from Gilbert, Arizona.
Yep.
She's one of ours. Jennifer moved to Nashville in 2016 with nothing but a Bible and a clear vision and a call in her life. Fast forward to today, and Jennifer has made her own path down Music Row, having written and co-written hundreds of songs, while recently debuting her self-titled debut EP. And was that 2016?
That was
2018. 2018. So Jennifer is also Miss Arizona 2013 too. So she's repping. And if you're around here in Arizona, you might just catch her singing the national anthem at the Diamondbacks game. So we are so excited for her because also recently she has stumbled upon TikTok fame and it has accelerated her career, and God is just actually moving through the avenues of which we've been placed in, those avenues, and God is using it in her life. So Jennifer, I'm so excited to have you. God really orchestrated this time for us to be talking today, and I think we're talking about such a hard subject that so many people deal with, and I wouldn't have guessed, honestly, looking at your life, that these are things that you deal with. With comparison and anxiety and depression, and how that affects, especially in the career that you have. And I've known you for quite a while, and I've seen your journey from afar and up close in more recent years. But I would love for you to share the journey that God has brought you on, that process, because it's been a long one to get where you are.
Yes.
Would you just share that with us?
Okay, where do I even start? Let's start back kind of when we met. I was 10 years old probably. We went to our private Christian school together, Crossroads. And around that time, I don't know if you knew this at the time. I know you know it now, but I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, OCD, social anxiety. And I was still singing at the time, but no one really knew that. It was always a passion for me to sing. So back then, it was really hard because I was constantly in fear that someone was going to make fun of me. Someone was going to see me make a weird face or make a weird noise. So it really started back then. The insecurity and the comparison started at 10 years old, maybe even before that. So the journey between then to now has been a huge journey. God has definitely been involved in it. I believe the power of prayer has helped with that. My mom had a prayer group going when I was 10 years old. And I mean, I could go on and on about the story of how I've overcome that, but really it's just the point that my anxiety and comparison and insecurity really started then. So wanting to be a country singer my entire life, it felt impossible. A lot of times it still sometimes feels impossible, even though I'm in the middle of it and I've had some success recently, and still that comparison is still in the back of my mind always. And I don't know that it ever won't be for anybody, but that's just my story and kind of how I started music, and overcoming that social anxiety and still also dealing with it at the same time. It's a very interesting mix.
Right. And then so, I mean, if that's something that you've been moving through and trying to navigate for all of these years, how in the world did you say yes to the call that God said?
Gosh.
Because in your Bible, I mean, that I read, I mean, you left here with your Bible and a clear vision that God had called you to move there. And I think sometimes we all struggle with, like, how do we know what God is like saying to move out there? And you're saying, okay, I'm already dealing with comparison on this level, but I'm moving to Nashville, Tennessee, the hub of country music. And you just said yes to that and deciding, you know what, but how was that process? One, of saying yes to that, and then two, getting there and then dealing with that process, because again, it's been a long process. You've been there for a few years now, and how have you been dealing with that in that process?
Yeah. So I think the jump to Nashville was a couple years after I gave up my Miss Arizona crown. So I think it started before Miss Arizona, because Miss Arizona kind of gave me the launch to be able to be confident enough to move to Nashville. So before that, my end of my junior year in high school, I wanted to be in student council my senior year. And in order to do that, you had to give a speech in front of your entire senior class, which was about 800, 900 people. I was like, no, thank you. But I wanted it so badly. And I really think this is a God-given gift that he's given me. It's determination. I've always had some sort of determination. And if I want something bad enough, I'll figure it out, even if it scares me to death. And public speaking was one of those. So I was like, how can I make this work to where it's not too fearful? So I actually sang to my senior class as to why I should be in student council.
So singing is easier for you than speaking.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Okay. So it started with singing there. And then from there, I kind of built up. I enrolled myself in public speaking in college after high school. And I really tried to make myself do the uncomfortable things that I knew would help me grow. And it's just one tiny step after the other that led to being able to do Miss Arizona, that led to being confident enough to be able to move to Nashville. So it sounds like simple, but it was really hard, tiny steps.
Very hard, tiny steps. I can't, you know, when you said speaking in front of people, it's hilarious that I do that as well now because I never wanted to do those things. So it's kind of amazing how sometimes when God calls us to do something, it goes against our nature of what we feel comfortable doing.
Oh, yeah.
And that a lot of times we have to push past that. But when we do that, I think that's when sometimes that insecurity can creep in because you're not feeling comfortable.
Oh, yes.
Because you are risking something by being vulnerable and being who you are and just saying yes to what you feel like God is asking of you, or maybe giving you, like he's given you these talents and you're trying to be obedient with them. But by doing so, you are feeling a little vulnerable, stepping out and doing things that you wouldn't always, you just don't feel naturally comfortable doing. And I've seen you do that and you've consistently stepped out. But in that process, like once you've gotten there, what is that? Would you share with us that how being in the limelight or not in the limelight can cause this depression and anxiety because we've stayed too long in the comparison game?
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that's a passion of yours to talk about. And I would love for you to kind of dive into that with us today.
Yes, that is a huge passion because I've gone through seasons in my life where I've done well at being confident and kind of staying in my own lane and knowing God's path for me and not comparing my path to other people's path. And then there's also those moments in my life in those seasons where it's the complete opposite and all I can do is compare. And it actually makes me sad when I think about God thinking about me or looking down on me, that I'm focused on all these other people's lanes. And it's like, no, God made me this way and he has this path for me and I can't be grateful for it. And that it makes me sad when I think about it that way. But sometimes you're in such a dark space or a negative downward spiral and you feel like you can't get out of it. You feel like you can't help it. So TikTok is one of those things. Signing a record deal is one of those things. You think that once you just have this many followers on Instagram or TikTok, once you sign a record deal, everything's good and you hit your goal and it's going to be good from there. And it can't be further from the truth. I am so grateful for that. And yes, those were a lot of my goals, but I've never been more depressed in my life, right after I sign a record deal. And I think it's because you have these expectations on yourself. And then you have all these other people who are expecting something from you and you feel like you're not good enough. So when that happens, you have to reel it back in and be like, okay, this is who I am and this is how God made me. And you don't have to be no one's expecting you to be perfect. Well, there might be a few people out there who are judging your every move. But it's really hard to have, people expect, or I don't think people expect something from you. I think you think people are expecting all of this.
Okay, that's key. I think a lot of times what do they say? We think other people are thinking about us more often than they are.
Yep, and they're probably not because they're thinking about themselves. We have so much anxiety, and we're all thinking about ourselves.
That's true, and so often that picture of God looking down. I love that you explained it that way, of saying, just being sad, saying, "I have more for you," and you're looking around at everyone else's things.
Yes,
wishing, or wondering if that was your life.
Yeah.
What would that feel like? What would that be like? And instead he's like, but I have so much more for you. I have so much for you right here. And it actually makes me think of the parable of the talents in Matthew, where it's saying that like God gives the worker or the employer, I don't even know what I'm saying right now. But anyways, this guy, he had some workers. No, and on a vineyard, and he said, okay, I'm going to give 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1. I'm going to leave. And when I come back, whatever. So they come back and the 5 made it 10, the 2 made it 4, and the 1 didn't do anything with it. And I think that sometimes we get so afraid that ours isn't a lot, that 1, that we don't trust God with the 1, because we're like, well, you're doing that with the 2 and that with the 5, and you're making it 4 and 10, and you're making it this huge thing. And sometimes we look and we have 1 talent in our hand and we said, what can God actually do with this?
Yeah.
And so we keep it to ourselves, and God's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do anything with this, but I think that there's something beautiful about like accepting and believing that God created us this way for a purpose, and we have to stay in our lane. But what happens when you said that after you signed your record deal, that was one of the lowest points, and the depression hit after you got to your goal.
Yes.
Can you just walk through that a little bit? Because a lot of times when we reach our goals, you would assume that you would be ecstatic and so happy and fulfilled.
Yep.
But what happened with you in that moment? Where was your mindset, and how did you get out of that too?
I truly think it had to do with comparison, insecurities, and not thinking I deserved it, not thinking I was good enough. The enemy just comes in and speaks lies into you. He was screaming them into my ears. So all of a sudden, I felt like I didn't deserve it. I felt like I didn't work hard enough. I felt guilty that I got the record deal and some of my other friends didn't. So it started with that, which led into all of the insecurities and comparison coming out. I was comparing myself to feeling guilty that I had something more, what the world says, more, a record deal. I had something that my friends didn't, and I felt guilty for that, and I felt wrong. And then that's where the comparison started. And then I started comparing myself to the Carrie Underwoods, to the Garth Brooks, and all of them. And then I realized that I'm a signed artist now, and I can start comparing myself to these people. And that's really scary to think about, because they've been in the industry longer than I have. Again, they have their own path, and there's the whole word comparison again. So this industry is comparing. You're competing. You're trying to get the number 1 hit. You're trying to get this many streams. You're trying to get the Grammy. So I was all of a sudden jumped to my future, and I'm all having anxiety about my future and not enjoying the time that I have now. Right. And you never know what's going to happen. You could lose a deal. You could win 20 million Grammys.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. And
20 million.
Yeah, I don't know if that's even possible, but hey.
I'd like to see you do it.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
If anybody's going to do it, I'm cheering you on, girl. I'm cheering you on. I love it. I love it. And if you're just joining us, I'm here with Jennifer Smestad, and we are talking about the pain of comparison when we were really trying to walk out our call in our life. And she's just talking about that with us right now. And one thing that you were saying too is that you felt guilty about what you had and other people didn't have. But then you started feeling comparison for that. Yeah. So that's a lot of things to try and navigate, because sometimes I think we have to learn how to accept the blessings and say thank you, Lord, but also give him, just give it away. I had somebody tell me, whenever somebody tells you compliments or God gives you these, it's just okay, thank you. It's as receiving a flower. And then you collect the bouquet, and then you just give it to God at the end of it. You're okay, it's yours, it's yours, it's yours. And it's just remembering that this is my call. This is my lane. Your lane is to be a signed artist. That's what God has for you, and your gifts and your graces. And you get to be in that community making a difference. And that's the huge part too, is because we're created for something and we're called to do something, but we're also commissioned to go into community and to be that light where they are. And that's still hard, because you have to go out and do those things. And sometimes that can be difficult to be so social at times when you're already feeling anxiety and depression, and you have to. So how do you deal with the world that we live in and then having to work through being so social?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I said I know that if I do the things that make me uncomfortable, they will help me grow, and you just have to practice it. So that's something that and it's so easy to just choose to stay home in your sweatpants and not leave the house. That's the easier decision, and I do it more times than I want to. And especially with the pandemic, it's been very easy to not do anything really. So it was great for my social anxiety, but it also caused more anxiety at the end of the day. So now where I was practicing it all the time, I've had a year off, and it's heightened again. And I didn't realize it until everything started opening back up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I've been doing this. So I really think it's one of those things where you just have to go out and do it. And I mean, the whole thing about the comparison is so hard, because when you have social anxiety, all you're thinking about is, oh my gosh, are they looking at me? Do they think this part of me is ugly, or do they think I have a horrible voice, or whatever it is? And there's so much anxiety going on with this. And what do I say next? What are they thinking about me? So really being grounded in who you are and knowing how God made you. That it sounds so simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do, is knowing this is who I am. This is how God made me. And you want to know who you are in the Lord. I am not only a country artist. I am not only a songwriter. I would actually rather know that I'm a child of God, and then I'm this.
Right. So
trying to remind yourself constantly over and over that you are a child of God, and you're like, oh, what can I do wrong?
Right.
Child of God.
Right. But then sometimes you're walking in that, and as you're stepping out and you're saying yes to those little things, and you're like, okay, I got to get back out there. I've got to live into the call, because God doesn't want us to just be isolated and hide our gifts.
Yes.
But also we need to be aware of how we're feeling, of course, because you really have social anxiety. And so trying to deal with that comparison, you have to navigate your heart place, but also God has called us to go out and be that. And so we have to kind of process one from the other.
Yes.
How do we navigate that? And I think that's can be difficult, because as you've said yes, God's also blessed you.
Yeah, it's true.
And has made it more social in the process. And even recently on TikTok with your song Half a Man. Okay, if you have not heard it, I will link it in all of the show notes if you want to go listen on podcast or YouTube, because I cried also, because I just love my dad. But I just cried, and it's just taking off on TikTok. But with that has come extra things past it. So when we say yes, there's always more things behind it. As God's blessed us. So
absolutely. Well, first of all, how that song took off on TikTok, there is no explanation than God, because I had just downloaded TikTok. I did not know what it was, and I did not know how to use it. So I just uploaded a random video that I made, and I didn't even include the name of the song. I didn't like upload the song properly. If you know how TikTok works, you know that you have to add like the song properly, and I didn't do anything correctly. And I did it at like 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. So I woke up to it going viral. I was like, okay, this is awesome. So how it took off in the first place was God. And then I have that platform now with TikTok to be able to grow my music, to be able to, and my thing is, I want to be a light in the entertainment industry, and I don't want to, for lack of better words, like shove God down people's faces. I really hope that I can live out a godly life, and that people will wonder why I have joy, or people will wonder, what it is in me, and then I can explain it. Or I have some songs that I love. I eventually want to do a worship project. So, with TikTok now, I have the pressure of, you have to do this many videos a day. You have to do this many posts on Instagram a day. And it's a lot. And then once you start to realize that, like, okay, this is what I have to do, I just kind of don't do anything at all because I'm way too stressed. So my team is like, we suggest you to do 3 a day. I'm doing 3 a week, maybe even that, maybe 0 a week. So I've realized, honestly, in the past couple weeks, a very recent realization, it's kind of like tithing. God can do more with 10% of your money than you can with 90. And I feel that same way with TikTok. I feel like that was the Holy Spirit telling me, look what I did to half the man in the first place. And now with your social media, don't stress about doing 3 a day where you're not being authentic anymore. He can do more with, let's say, 3 posts a week than I can with 3 a day, or than the fans can with 3 a day, or than anyone can with 3 a day. So I've had to realize, like, okay, it's more important to have quality content and be my authentic self than to just put all this out there because the world says I have to.
Right. And do you feel like authenticity helps combat the comparison?
Yes, because I've been trying. I already sometimes feel like I'm being somewhat fake sometimes when I'm crying and breaking down right before I go on stage, or right before I have a writing session, and then I get through it, and then I go home and I kind of fall into that depression again. And social media was adding to that when I was trying to just be on all the time, and then I'd end up being so down that I can't be on at all. So I definitely think being authentic has a huge role to play in, honestly, even getting you out of depression. Is just accepting what you're going through, and accepting that you're going to have to go through it to have a big breakthrough, and just trying to be as authentic as possible on social media. I never want people to look at me and think that I have this perfect life, because that's furthest from the truth.
Right. And I love that you're saying to be real in those dark moments. And that's one of the things that I am just so huge on is being honest with where you are will get you out. It brings healing. It brings hope, because you're like, okay, sometimes it just takes speaking it out to someone and saying, this is actually how I'm really feeling. And even on social, when I see other people seeing what they're actually going through, I connect with that more.
Yes.
Like, I'm happy with them for the cool things and the, the highlight reel, if you will. I like those things, but what I connect with the authentic things.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what you were saying too. And so what's something that you have found has helped you get out of those, that you just hold on to those truths that, like, when you're in those moments of depression or anxiety or comparison, what's something that you feel like that you can hold on to that somebody else can hold on to if they're going through something like this?
Yeah, I think what I've realized is the small steps and accepting where you're at and allowing yourself to grieve. But then you also have to take the tiniest steps. Like if you have depression, get out of bed, that's a step. Put clothes on, that's a step. Go on a 10-minute walk even, that's a step. So I really think it's allowing yourself to celebrate the small steps, because it will always lead to something bigger.
Right. Celebrate the small steps. I love that. And I just love, this has been a joy. I'm so glad that you have been on air today, and I would love people to get to connect with you because this is a topic that I think all of us deal with, and to some extent. But the more the world that we're in that says that, hey, like you have to be this way to get this many followers, or even if you're not even on social media, we can compare each other's lives, and I just feel like this is such a huge topic. But to say we need to be authentic, we need to be real, we need to take the small steps to get there. And you do that. I've watched you live this out, and I would love for people to connect with you as you're doing this. So how can people connect with you, Jen?
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all of it. It's all at Jennifer Smestad. So
do you
pretty
want to spell
simple.
that out for us?
Jennifer. Smestad, Smestad.
And I will, again, link to all of those things if you're listening later. But I am so grateful for you. I love that we get to do this together. And just remember that every day is an invitation to live the vibrant life. Thank you for joining me on the Vibrant Life Show. I would love to connect with you and get to know you. My favorite place to hang out is over on Instagram at allie.gentry or over on Facebook. You can also go to my website, alliegentry.com. That's ALIGENTRY.com. Sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date and get links to the show on all platforms after we air, the show's YouTube channel, and really just all the things. I'm so honored to get to hang out with you today. My heart is that you remember that each day is an invitation to live the vibrant life.